Now
Thanks,
that we're
Mark.
recording, everybody's going to be quiet.
Daryl,
If all-
sorry I couldn't make your session on Wednesday. I was driving.
Now, let's see if I can get
That was our Tuesday. It took me a second to
Oh,
think.
sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
your Tuesday,
Mhm.
my Wednesday morning. No, we were driving to the state convention, so. And Scotty won't be on. I was going to put apologies for John, but he made it.
And Daryl, Roz did a very good call yesterday.
That's
Oh,
nice.
congratulations, Russ.
She did very well.
All right.
I survived.
Called the 10 squares.
I wish I could see 10 squares.
I wish I could see 10 inches in front of me. That's what I need these for. Unfortunately, if I wear these, I can't see the dancers. I can see across a room, read an A4 sheet of paper across a room, but I can't see 5 inches in front of me. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is now 9 o'clock, and I suppose it's time to start. What I wanted to talk about today was starting simple. In the latest edition of Behind the Mic magazine, that's just come out, there was an article I'd written about the first patter panic, and we've talked about this in a couple of other issues, and we've talked about this a couple of times here. And I got a request to revisit this topic, primarily with the focus on sequence building, or building a string of sequences of usable pattern for new callers. Now, newer callers often feel very disheartened that they're not sight calling right away. And it makes it very unfortunate for them, the amount of pressure they're under. And they make this mistake of trying to write these long sequences and long strings of choreography that they know work. But when it comes time to deliver it, one of two things usually happen. They get lost when trying to remember this long pattern sequence, or if they're trying to watch the dancers and read this long sequence at the same time, they get lost. Or if they do get successful and they're able to do both, it sounds like they're actually reading, which is what they are doing. And they're reading this and then seeing the dancers. Yeah, okay, I finished the square through. Now what's next? Swing through. Okay, swing through, watch the dancers. And the timing gets way off. And the question that is most frequently asked is, how do you remember all these long sequences when you're calling? I can't do that because I can't sight call yet. I'm so frustrated with this. I'm going to tell you right now, callers do not need that stress. Any caller, especially new callers, you do not need that kind of stress in your life. So let me state that you as a new caller should never try to learn how to sight call without having a good, solid foundation of basic fundamentals. And part of that fundamentals is simple modules. It's very stressful to call and try and remember everything, and then trying to resolve and trying to remember who's with who while remembering what hand does what and which hand is free. Many callers freeze up and they can't remember. They don't know how to resolve, and they can no longer remember their techniques, and they panic. Now, this probably sounds very familiar to all of us at one time. The reason is every single one of us has been there. So for a new caller, if somebody's saying, oh, you got a sight call, you got to do this, I'm saying don't. It's not even worth the effort. It's not worth the stress to even try and sight call until you have a foundation. It's more important to develop the skills of simple choreographic management, a resolution technique, and believe me, there's a reason I say that you need to have one. You need to have knowledge of command time, delivery time, and execution time, and so much more before you start trying to force dancers to move around in this haphazard sight routine. Okay? And that's what it is. It becomes a haphazard sight routine. Don't even try at the start. It is not worth the stress. Sight calling is an important skill. I'm not going to deny that. But to get there, you've got to lay this foundation on which to build your sight skills. And though using what you know, you've got to understand the basic formations. What's a line? What's a box? You've got to understand it. You've got to start with the 4 simple recognizable phasars. before you start sight calling. And those are your corner box, your partner line, your corner line, and your right-hand lady box out of sequence. Okay. You've got to learn about mixing and matching what you already know. You know this bit of a singing call. You know what it does. You know how to get into it. You know how to get out of it. This is done in short, easy to remember pieces that are interchangeable. And by doing this, you begin to develop those important skills of delivery, delivery timing, presentation, presentation timing, and you also begin to recognize sequences that work from various common formations, because you begin to recognize the formation while you're calling it. You say, oh, head square. Okay, that's a corner box. I recognize that. If I do the rest of my singing call, swing through, boys, run, bend the line, right and left through, flutter, wheel, slide through, I'm back in a corner box. Wow, I've got a module. You know, you begin to recognize what does what. And this also allows you to build up variety. It gives you interest for the dancers, but more importantly, it cements into your memory a foundation that's going to stand you well, regardless of the eventual program that you're going to be calling in. Nevertheless, it is a process, and it takes hard work and it takes practice. So what we're going to do is we're going to start right at the beginning and see how we do this. Okay. Despite self-doubt, it is most likely new callers already know several long sequences. These are flow sequences or routines, and they're not even aware that they know them. The reason is because you already know that long sequence as several short bits. You just haven't taken the time to recognize them and put them together. The first and the hardest part about learning this is to convince yourself that you already know them. Trust yourself. It's true. You already know a lot more than you think you do. Unfortunately, it's been my experience that most caller school often begin teaching patter and teaching patter delivery by using two modules, a line module, a line 0, and a box 0. There's nothing wrong with that. But then what they do is they introduce a resolution technique, be it a box or the friends and enemies or whatever resolution technique is popular at the time or with that caller. And what they do is, okay, you got that. They'll show you how to do it. You know a box 0, you know a line 0. Great, get up there and call. And they tell this new caller, just move the dancers around, get them into a line or a box, use that module, get them into a box, use the box module. Great, now resolve using the technique. For a new caller, that is not only disheartening, it's hard, and it is the creation of an unfair expectation on new callers. It's also the reason for the failure of many new callers, and one of the reasons why many new callers quit. It's because of this unfair expectation that we put on them. Many teachers of new callers and many mentors teach from their own level of knowledge, and they fail to recognize that learning starts at the student's level of knowledge. And if you're teaching correctly, you're going to encourage that student to reach your level and hopefully surpass it. And there's nothing greater in pride than watching somebody that you taught to call become a better caller than you are. It's like any kind of activity. This will never be achieved by forcing a new caller to sight call without a foundation of base foundation mechanics from which to build. This is like telling somebody how to swim, throwing them in the deep end of a fast flowing river. Those that are going to sink, quit. Those that manage to get their heads up, cough and sputter and have a hard time. And very, very few will keep pushing and actually learn how to swim, but they're not learning what this guy told them that threw them in the water. They end up learning it on their own to find their own way through it. A very important component of this is recognition and the use of modules. Now, I've got to say, I'm a very strong proponent of sight calling, of extemporaneous calling, of sight resolution and resolution techniques. And even though what I'm saying may not seem like it, I'm also a believer that sight calling means incorporating prepared and practiced modules, theme sequences, prepared resolution from known common formations. All of that is a part of sight calling. And secondly, in contrast to many other callers, I think it's important that all new callers learn and are confident in at least one resolution technique, and they should learn that early. That way they have the confidence to realize that they know if I get lost, I can continue, quickly resolve a square and start again. Eventually, they come to recognize that you don't need that resolution technique. But what it's done is it's take that stress of resolving a square off the table and allows you to concentrate on things that are much, much, much more important than learning how to resolve a square from sight immediately. Okay, we've got to learn to take the right approach. Now, how should we approach teaching new callers to start calling patter without that expectation, that forced unnecessary stress? The answer is to start with small steps leading to big things. I started with 2 singing calls and 2 zeros. There's many textbooks, modules, organizational workshops, caller schools, and all sorts of things available on the internet to callers at any level. But nevertheless, when virtually all callers start, with a few exceptions, they begin to practice their first patterns using what they know. And it's usually a singing call or words. And it usually takes 2 forms. The first one is calling random movements to the music to feel the rhythm of the pattern. We'll head 2 couple square through. When I get 4 hands around, you can go load the boat. And when I get there, touch a quarter, coordinate. And I know that makes absolutely no sense. All I'm getting is the feeling of the delivery of the phrasing. That's a benefit. You get to learn to adapt phrasing and flow and enunciation with the music. The big drawback is you're not actually using the musical timing of the movements and body flow to incorporate in your pattern. And you get an unrealistic expectation of what you're doing. The second form, and the more common thing that happens, is most callers know, or most new callers know, about 1 to 5 singing calls when they start. They draw on that memory of the figures in those singing calls, and they adapt their patter routines into flowing and successful routines. Now, benefit of this is you have the delivery timing because you know it from the singing call, or you're at least partially familiar with it. And you know, or moderately know, the sequence from the singing call. Another benefit is the movements and the body flow being used in that singing call sequence that you're using in your pattern are normally accurate. They usually lead to a corner resolution somewhere along the line, and it's comfortable and easy. It's also a good way to adapt pattern phrasing and flow with the music. The one drawback is your pattern becomes redundant, so you tend to rely on the same flow figure, that same singing call figure, repeatedly. However, this second method for new callers starting is a very valuable tool. Now, I've been asked by many new callers that I've taught, how do you sight call and still remember so many zeros and combinations and modules? Well, how do you? They ask, oh, I want to be a sight caller. That way I don't have to remember anything. Well, guess what? You're not a sight caller if you don't remember anything, because there's no such thing as a sight caller that doesn't use modules or prepared routines or something or techniques that they have learned. And I'll argue that, but that's an argument for a different side. Okay. Okay. Part of the secret is if you can accept the fact that pure sight calling is a myth. It does not exist. I'm going to go out on a limb and say all callers use modules. All callers use prepared sequences. All callers use memorized techniques to manipulate the dancers on the floor, or a known get out, or they set up something that they know they can get out from with a technique. Sight is a natural extension of being able to do this and being able to blend this in with your extemporaneous calling. You set it up, you knock it down. The truth is, pattern calling is much, much more than just moving dancers around the floor successfully. And I have yet to meet a caller that does not have some memory modules and basic tools in their toolbox to draw from. Sight calling is little more than knowing these three basic tools and expanding the toolbox beyond that 1 or 2 known formations comfortably. And as you grow and practice, so does your toolbox grow, so does your ability to sight call and move the dancers around without memorized sequences, and you gain the ability to resolve from anywhere because you've learned those techniques. You've learned how to watch. You've learned how to recognize formations. And, oh, hey, they're in a corner box out of sequence. I can call this, and they're home. That's memory, but you're sighting to that point where you're using your memory. As callers get better and more practice, their ability to seemingly randomize the flow and move comfortably around the floor increases. The reason for this is they've learned to use the tools of the calling trait effectively, and they've learned to build bigger and better things with the tools and the resources available to them. Nevertheless, it all starts pretty much with 3 basic tools. Those 3 basic tools in the toolbox are: 1, an understanding of the individual square dance movement. What's the definition? How does it work? Where does it start? Where does it finish? What does it effectively do to the dancers? At the early stage, you need to know a minimum how the movement works, where it starts and where it finishes. Now, this doesn't mean knowing where everyone is or what's the name of this formation or what's that. Is this an inverted diamond in an hourglass that's turned upside down? Most of that, you may never know. And you know what? You don't really have to know. That's communication for callers to talk to other callers. If I say you're in a box 1-4, you're in a 0 box, or you're in a corner box, that's so I can communicate to say the dancers are here. I don't have to explain how I got there. I could easily just say, if I do head square through, okay, that's where I'm at. It says exactly the same thing. So all of that comes in time. What it does, however, is refer to things like from a static square, head square through puts me in a box, or pass through from a line, a 4, puts me from a face-to-face line to a back-to-back line. It's still a line, but it's simple things. And if you can learn and understand those basics and your movements for the level you're learning and calling, and hopefully you're starting at basic and mainstream, then you'll quickly learn that when I call this movement, I end up in this position. And if I call something else, I end up in a different position. And once you start to do that, you're going to find your calling is smooth. This hand's free, that's free. And we all know, and we've had a number of sessions, Don's had sessions, most Caller Lab curriculums as part of it. We've had sessions here in this thing. Your call analysis sheet is your friend in learning. I think, Janet, you gave an excellent session on your call analysis sheet and how you've expanded it. We've had Guido Haas do his. We've had a number of people do just whole sessions on their call analysis sheet. Number 2, this is the one I get a lot of contradiction on. The caller must learn, and this is a new caller, must learn one guaranteed resolution technique. Practice it until you own it. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter if you repeat it. I like the friends and enemies because it's very, very simple. Practice it until you know it. Once you own a resolution technique, you can confidently state that it doesn't matter where the dancers are at any time, you can get them home if they're symmetrical. Knowing that is the greatest confidence builder in the world for new callers. What it means is you never have to worry about getting lost because you know you can get the dancers home if you lose your place. You'll always be able to get them home without having to fix it, star promenade, pick up your original partner, etc. And don't laugh, even the best callers still do this at one time. The other thing is, once you know a resolution technique, you can call yourself a sight caller because the first 2 tools, being able to move the dancers and get them home, is really all sight calling is. That's all there is. All the rest of it is being able to do it well. Most important, now that you know and trust that you can resolve a square from anywhere, you can put that nonsense away that I must sight call and sight resolve. Not yet. I say learn it so you can put it away. It's like the spare tire in your car. It's there, you check it. So if you do get a flat, you can take the tire out, put it on, and get you to some place where you can get your tire fixed and get back and start on a proper road trip. That's what your resolution technique, a spare tire. You know it works? Good. Put it away and hope you never have to use it for a long, long time. Get rid of that nonsense. I must sight call and sight resolve. You can really start to learn to call now that you know that, and you can build up the basic fundamentals of being a caller. The third tool in your toolbox is a new caller must learn at least 1 module 0 from a line and 1 module 0 from a box. I say they must learn that. It doesn't have to be the magic module. All those foundation modules, they'll come in time. But if you learn a box and you learn a line 0, and that's a true 0, it takes you from the same spot to the same spot from a box and a line, and learn to recognize those quickly. What is my computer doing here? I don't want that. Go away. Okay. Now, the reason I say this is these 2 zeros are your breathing time to relax and gather yourself when, and it will happen, you lose your place on the floor. Trust me, it's going to happen. But if you know your movements, it doesn't matter. You're always usually no more than 3 movements away from a line or a box. There are callers that will argue sometimes you're only 1 movement away, and yes, you are generally. But I say 3 because sometimes a new caller might take you 1 or 2 to get there. Once you get to either that line or the box, you can use 1 or 2. You can use one of those 2 modules, I should say, to gather yourself and still keep the dancers moving. You know, I've called this, I'm in a box. Oh, I don't know where I am. Star through, go up to the middle and back. I've got lines, good. Pass through, wheel and deal, double pass through. First couple go left, next couple go right. I'm thinking, I know that works. I don't have to even look at the dancers. I've got my eyes closed. I can take a breath. I can gather my thoughts. Great. I don't know where they are. I've got my resolution technique to fall back on. Great. I've done that. Now they're home. I'm going back to what I know, what I prepared, what I practiced. It allows you to use that one guaranteed resolution technique that you hope you never have to use. And I guarantee you will use it. It allows you to start building bigger and better things with a foundation. So for the purpose of this exercise and for clarification of what I'm talking about, I'm going to use just 2 modules, and I'm going to use the 2 modules that I was given when I first learned to call. Now, I know that the first one here, most of you will see, is a magic module and a conversion module, and they're both conversion modules, but it's combined into one. The first module I learned was a box module, and that's swing through, girls circulate, boys trade, boys run, bend the line, touch a quarter, all 8 circulate, boys run, takes me from a corner box to a corner box or any box back to that same box. The second one was the line module, pass through, wheel and deal, double pass through, first couple go left, next couple go right. Takes me from that line back to that same line. It's got good interactive flow and the dancers are moving and, you know, all of this kind of stuff. Now you'll note that both of these modules have good interactive flow through the square, and they do absolutely nothing other than move dancers from one point around the square and back to the same point without changing anything. Once I have these 3 basic tools, and I can start calling. I understand what the movements do. Now we're just going to assume this for now because that's a whole new caller training session, learning what movements do. That's part of the foundation you have to build. We're going to assume you have a resolution technique, or you've at least got it written down and you know how to use it, or you can refresh your technique at a glance. So we're going to assume that for now. I have these 2 modules, one from a line, one from a box. The question is, how do I call? Well, what I say is start easy. What you got to do is be able to move the dancers around using known stuff to make your pattern. Now, remember what I said at the beginning? Most callers know at least 1 to 5 or 3 to 5 singing call figures. The figures in these 2 singing calls that you see on the screen are known sequences. They're just from singing calls. Head, square through, swing through, boys run, Ferris wheel, centers pass through, slide through, square through 3, swing your corner and promenade. The second one, head, square through 4, right and left through, veer to the left, couple circulate, chain down the line, star through, pass through, trade by, swing your corner. Lots of material there, lots of flow, lots of movement around the floor. 2 very simple singing calls. So if I look at those, what does this do? Well, the first one takes me from a static square to a corner swing. If I change the corner swing to an Allemande left, I have a short sequence. I can do an Allemande left instead of swing your corner and a right and left grand. It's the same sequence for a pattern. Now I've got a pattern sequence. I can do the same thing with the last one and say, hey, look, I'm calling pattern. But I can't keep doing this over and over and over again because then it just gets boring. So let's just take a little short here and go to combinations. Is that up on your screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so let's look at what this does, what each movement does at this call, but we're only going to look at the lines and boxes of these 2 singing call figures. So if I start, I'm in a static square and I go head square through. Okay, that puts me in a box. Okay, I've got a box module. I could call a box, but I've identified that I'm in a box. Swing through. Okay, it's not a line or a box, so I'm going to ignore it. Boys run, not a line or a box, so I'm going to ignore it. Ferris wheel, not a line or a box, I'm going to, pass through. That puts me back to a box. I know I can use a box module there. Slide through, that puts me to a line. I can use a line 0 module there. Square through 3, there's my Allemande left. And I can finish my sequence with a right and left grand and promenade home. I actually encourage new callers to use right and left grand and promenade because that allows you to take a breath while the dancers move. Second figure, square through 4, that puts me in a box. Oh, there's a box again. I know square through will put me in a box. Right and left through, that's created another box. Veer to the left, not a box, so I'm going to ignore it. Couple circulate, not a box or a line or facing line. I'm going to ignore it. Chain down the line. That's put me in facing lines. So now I can insert a module, a facing line 0 module. Pass through, nope. Slide through, trade, or slide through, pass through, trade by the slide through, put me in a box. Alaman left, and again, I'm going to do a right and left grand. Even though these things resolve to home, I'm going to do the right and left grand, and I'm going to use that promenade. It's a halfway promenade. I'm going to use it to take me home. So once I've done that, I can say anywhere that I had one of those boxes, I can insert a box module, can't I? Anywhere I had one of those lines, I can insert a line module. And that's going to take that repetitive pattern and add a little dimension. And I haven't done anything except add to that a short sequence that I already know. So here's the same thing, but remember our module: swing through, girls circulate, boys trade, boys run, bend the line, touch, quarter circulate, boys run. Now that's a long module, I know, but that's the first one I was given to learn. So I've thrown that at you. It can be any 0 module. And then I go back to my singing call figure. Oh, I get to that center's pass through. I'm going to insert another box module, the same one even. And then I go back to my singing call figure. Oh, slide through puts me in a line. I'm going to put my line module in there. And then I'm going to finish my singing call, which was square through 3, Alaman left, right, and left grand. And what does that do? I'm just going to move that to fast so it goes a little bit quicker. You know, the dancers are moving all over the floor. And there's fairly good interaction with the dancers. Look, they're on a different side. There's a swing through. Girls circulate. They're moving. Boys run. I'm repeating this sequence, but it's different people doing it. Pass through, wheel and deal. I'm going a different direction. I'm interacting. There's a right and left grand. And they promenade home. Okay. I've used 132 beats of music. That's almost 2 singing call figures, isn't it? And wow, the dancers have danced. Have I kept them in the same spot? No, they seem to be using the floor. Well, the sides didn't get to use the other side of the floor, but they moved around. So the dancers are moving. At this point, we still have not done any sight calling, but what we've done is we've used the one singing call figure and 2 memorized modules, and we've got this. So, and we've inserted them into the singing call where we've identified a box and a square. So, you know, at the first square through, you're in a corner box or an Alaman left box, if you will. You can put that in. You can also put in any of your foundation modules that, you know, swing through, boys run, Ferris wheel, centers pass through. You can do any of those things, and it brings you back to the same box. Now you've got 2 modules. You can use it anytime you have any box anywhere. It doesn't have to be a corner box. It's just a box. You're filling it in, same place to the same place. And what you can do next, let's look at the second figure. Head square through, that takes us to a box. I can insert a box module. Right and left through, that's a box. I can insert a box module there. I can insert it here and ignore this one, or I can ignore this one and insert it here. Gives a different change, different feel. Veer to the left, couple circulate. There's forward flow around the square, chain down the line. I've changed the dimension and the angles I'm looking at. I can do a line 0. That's going to give me increased flow. Star through, I'm back in a box. I can insert a box 0. Pass through, trade by, swing the corner, Alaman left, right and left grand. All of that is just the second singing call figure. So if I do that, I'm going to put the first singing call figure. Where are you? Oh, sorry, this is the second singing call figure. And I'm going to insert the box module, come back to the singing call, insert a line module, back to the singing call, put the box module from the first singing call, swing through, boys run, Ferris wheel, centers pass through, recognize that, and then finish the singing call. And what does that look like? Girls circulate, boys trade. There's a line. Okay, back to the singing call. Here's a line. There's a line launch, pass through, wheel and deal, double pass through, first left, next right, star through. There's a box, swing through. Ferris wheel, boys run. Centers pass through. Alaman left, right and left grand. And I've got a halfway promenade. Oh, look, there's another 129 beats of music, or 264 beat phrases, if you will. And are the dancers using the floor? Yeah, they appear to be. They appear to be moving pretty well around the floor. So I can do all this. So what am I going to do, or how am I going to use these two singing calls and these two modules? Well, guess what? My singing call, each one of those singing calls starts in a head square through. That's a box and takes me to a corner box for that Alaman left, or to the resolution for the Alaman left. Each one of those is a module in itself. So I can use the entire singing call from one as a module to insert and add that with my new modules. That's going to give me a lot of variety so that when I want to carry on, I get sequences like this. This is my first singing call figure. There's my second singing call figure. I finished the singing call. I've added one of our foundations, the chicken plucker. Oh, because I've changed over here. I've added a chicken plucker changeover. Over here, I'm going to do my zero, and then I'm going to finish the chicken plucker to take it back. A right and left through, singing call. I'm now in my first singing call figure. I'm back to it. Corner line module, just a line. I've recognized it's a line, pass through, wheel and deal, double pass through, first couple left, next right. Square through 3 for the resolution. And what's that look like? And again, please remember, I've just introduced a chicken plucker. That's it. 2 singing calls, a line 0, a box 0, and a chicken plucker. That's all I've done here. And look at where the dancers are moving around the floor. You know, number 4 couple, oh yeah, they've actually crossed over there. What's going on here? Number 4 is still in. Okay, they're crossing over with the right and left grand. They're using the floor. But we're going to start with them this time. So now they're dancing with different people. Now they're not only on a different side, they're moving and interacting with different people entirely. And they're moving. And I'm still using the exact same singing call figures, but I'm mixing and matching the order in which these sequences go. And it feels very different. It feels very random to the dancers. And of course, I'm going to finish it off with an Alaman left and a right and left grand and a promenade halfway home. So what has happened? For this variety, I've mixed and matched these routines. And if you keep looking at what you know, you're going to find out that you know a lot more than you think. With these 2 modules and 2 singing calls and only adding in the 0 modules at the box and line position, I've made at least 8 independent different pattern routines from the first singing call, 12 different routines from the second call, by only changing and adding 1 box or 1 line module. This increases exponentially if I add more than 1 box or more than 1 line in the same figure. And I still have not done any sight calling because at this point, all we've been using is 2 singing call figures, a box module, and a line module. In this one, I added the chicken plucker, and we can rework the whole thing to bring back that line module, that box module, and the singing call figures because we're doing it with different people looking at a different point of the square, moving up and down, across and back and forth across this grid with new people. And by changing the order, it feels different. What it's doing to you as a new caller, though, is it's developing a good dance pattern. It's allowing you to develop your visual tracking of the dancers. It's allowing you to connect to and improve your lead time, your command time, your execution time, and your timing. It's cementing those modules for flow into your repertoire, and it's beginning to see things that help lead to the skills needed to develop into being a sight caller, being able to recognize that box on the flow and say, hey, I need a break. I'm going to call that box module. That's part of being a sight caller. Things like it'll allow you to see the known things like star through converts a box to a line, but star through also converts a line to a box from normal lines and normal boxes. So these are the kinds of things that you have. And when you do this kind of stuff, sorry, when you do this kind of stuff, you're going to find it very, very, very quick and easy to call effective patter that flows as a new caller, gain the confidence in the structure of your delivery, give good flowing choreography and entertainment to the dancer, and you are going to develop those foundation skills that are going to stand you well. Now, there is a caution to this. Sight calling is a good choreographic management tool, but it's only one of many. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a good foundation of basic calling fundamentals before, and this is my opinion, before you should even attempt to try it. If you try and rush into it, you're going to suffer frustration, stress, anxiety, and disappointment. And that's not what this game is about. Okay? Your dancers are going to suffer that even more because they're going to be suffering right along with you, and they're the ones that have to try and do what you're suffering to tell them to do. You're a new caller. Do not be forced to rush to be a sight caller. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Ken Ritusi and Tony Oxendine and Daryl Clendenin and Bob Elling, and they're all saying, hey, do this, do this, do this. If you're not comfortable and you don't think you're ready, just say, hey, I'm not ready for that yet. I'm still building my foundation. Once you can do that, you're going to find that you're already halfway there. So for new callers, don't be forced to rush to be a sight caller. And for those of you that call or mentor new callers, do not rush new callers. They're going to set their own pace. Their abilities are going to come in time. But the principle is being the same as a dancer being rushed to plus or advanced without having the basic fundamentals. You think you're going to be doing well up to the point where you get to advanced, and then you got to go and learn back how to redo basics. And nobody wants to do that. So they're either going to quit or they're going to say, no, we're not going to do that. Caller's not going to reteach it because the dancers are leaving, and you end up with bad dancing, and the dancers leave you and they leave your calling for one reason. You're simply bad at it. You don't have a foundation. Using what we know and what we've done above with just those 2 modules and 2 singing calls, we've already created just in that little bit 6.5 minutes of non-repetitive patter sequencing that is danceable, uses the floor, and interacts the dancer successfully. Oh, 6.5 minutes. Oh, we're out of music, because a patter record for a new caller should never be more than 4 minutes in length. I don't think a patter record should ever be more than 4 minutes in length, but things have changed. That's calling for the callers, not for the dancers. And we've already passed that 4-minute mark. This is just to show you that as a new caller, using what you already know, you can prepare, you can analyze, you can repeat sequences, you can change the order using heads and sides. You can start with the second figure first and create a very short sequence that the dancers are going to enjoy. You can insert a module. You can repeat it, start with the sides and insert a different module somewhere else. Now you've got a whole new routine. We don't have to use many changes. We can also do the same thing using the first figure and substituting zeros from the second figure. And you have many, many, many more routines that you already know as a new caller. You have a lot of short sequences that you can mix and match, and you don't have enough music to get it all in. Meanwhile, what you've done is you've created a floor of happy dancers that are dancing, choreography that's flowing, it's going good with the music, good choreography, and a good appreciative work from the dancers of the work you've done. You haven't even added the chicken plucker into the double routines available to us with different people, nor the invert and rotate modules to take in patterns in different directions on the floor, nor have we used any of those basic foundation conversion modules, even though I know that first one is 2 of them in itself. What happens is as you gain confidence in your delivery, your timing, and the dancers build that confidence in you, you are growing your foundation as a new caller, and that foundation is the fundamental that you'll find yourself building a very, very solid foundation from which you can eventually venture out with small forays into more modules, a small foray into a different singing call, a small foray into focus modules that you're going to introduce for a theme, Small forays into practicing those mental image lessons that you're taking from Don Beck. Small forays into burnt image, where you're going to isolate those two and just move them around and get them back to that same footprint. Small forays into isolated sight, where you're going to put 4 people together, put a rubber band and move them around the floor, and then go back to your module. Okay. Then into isolated sight, then into sight calling and everything that goes with it. But none of this will work if you start at the end. If you start learning to sight call right from the beginning and say, here's a module, you know what a box is, here's a resolution technique, go, you're a sight caller. You're going to quit, you're going to get frustrated, or worse, you're going to keep at it and you're going to be a bad caller and everything that goes with that. Now, just a note on using modules. Modules are quite easy. You call a get in, head square through. That's a get into a corner box. If I know that from a static square, head square through is a get into a corner box, that square through becomes a module because it takes me from a known to a known. It's a memorized piece of choreography. I personally don't call one movement a module. Some people will. For me, it's a movement. That's but if I do heads promenade halfway, or heads right and left through past the ocean extend, I'm in an ocean wave. It's still a corner box, but it's there. Hey, that's a module. That's an equivalent. It's an equivalent module of a square through. So I can call a get in. Optionally, I can call a conversion, change it from a box to a line. Optionally, I can call a zero, box to the box, line to the line. Once I get to where I'm known to be, partner line, corner box, I can call a get out. That's a module. I can use equivalents for variety. I said that with this square through, touch a quarter, boys run, does the same. It's giving me that little bit of variety. And all my singing calls are also modules. And if you're starting to write singing calls, you're going to be using modules, or you find yourself using modules and singing calls over and over again a lot of the time. Simple math on this. And this isn't my math. This is done by people that are a lot smarter than me that have taken the time to figure it out. 1 get in, 1 0, 1 get out. I've got 2 different routines that I can create out of that. 2 get ins, 2 zeros, 2 get outs, 28 different routines. 3 get ins, 3 zeros, 3 get outs, 360 different routines. It increases exponentially. 4 of each, 5,456. 5 get-ins, 5 zeros, 5 get-outs, 97,000 plus different routines are possible. 2 modules, 3 modules, 4 modules, 5 modules, insert, 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 because in most of those, there's a line in a box that you can interact. And some of these sequences are long, some of them are short. That's how much variety you can get just with 5 simple get-ins, 5 zeros, and 5 get-outs. And if you cannot fill an entire weekend with 5 get-ins, 5 zeros, and 5 get-outs and different routines, then you don't have a good foundation to start with. Okay, so I'm going to go back to what I said. To me, I believe there is no such thing as pure sight or pure sight resolution. It is a setup, it's a recognition of where you are, and it's using a memorized get out or a technique that is memorized to solve a puzzle. It's not pure sight. It's not something that you just make up as you go along. There's a reason you do it, and there's a reason and a methodology behind what you do. Sight calling is nothing more than watching the dancers and using what is known to you. That includes movement and action and reactions. What does a movement do? That's known to you. Incorporating various kinds of modules. We all do it. And applying different calling techniques, be it mental image, be it crams, be it whatever you're going to use. That's what it is. So my definition of a sight caller is a caller that watches the dancers, manipulates their actions by applying individual movements, flow sequences, prepared and memorized modules, and techniques with a practiced ability to manage 3 crucial points of timing. The lead time, when do I have to say it? The command time, or your delivery time, how long is it going to take me to say that, and then am I going to give it at the right moment? And the execution time. How long does it take the dancers to do that? where they're going to be at the end, so I know when I have to give the next command to let them dance. So lead time, command time, and execution time to give the dancers a comfortable and exciting dance to which they can feel good about themselves. That's my definition of a sight caller, not just somebody that can look at a floor, move them around, and get them home. A trained elephant can do that if you could teach them, you know. But would the dancers enjoy it? No. That is a lot of information, but that's my presentation for today. So let's open this up. I probably created a lot of controversy. We're going to start with Mark as always. Mark, were there any questions or anything in the chat? Because I couldn't see it, or any hands that went up?
Nope, none at all. Everybody was busy listening.
Oh. Well, let's open up the floor. Anybody want to have comments or rebuttals? Does anybody not believe me that there's no such thing as pure sight calling?
I think there is such a thing. And
Sorry?
I will never dance two tips to that same caller ever. Yeah, you get up there, you recognize it. It's really interesting that people, how clever they think they are when they're not. An example was I had talked a little bit about what square dance calling and that involved to my debate partner when I was in college. And he came and watched a Golden State Roundup with a nationally known caller. He's out there. And he says, Bob, explain this to me. Watch him call. There, he doesn't know where he's at. He's searching for something. Bingo, he found it. And there's a big emotional swing on the floor that he loses the floor while he's searching. And I don't know if I'm the only one here, but I go out there and you feel this big downer on the floor. Okay, he's lost. He's trying to fix it. He's trying to resolve it. Oh, he found it. Yippee-ki-yo, you know. And you lose so much entertainment value and emphasis on it. I called it a C1 tip one time where I was supposed to have 3 hours, but I ended up giving 2.5 hours away to other callers because it was a state convention. And I had 20 minutes for my tip, and I get there, and all of a sudden the challenge force, everybody's pointing at their partner. And I kept calling. I said, do you just want to get back home or do you want to dance? And man, they got all excited. I called 20 minutes without resolving them to home. And when the clock hit 12 noon, right on the dot, I resolved everybody to home. And that was 20 minutes of calling C1 that flowed well. And people danced it. And you should have seen the reaction on that floor. You know, it's like here was the second coming. You know, it was just.
Now let me ask you a question on this, Bob. When you were calling that, and what you're saying applies at every level, whether it's basic, C1 or C4. Did you happen to have an idea of when they got to A and B, you could do this little flow sequence that would work to take them to somewhere else, and then you could extemporaneously move to another place? Okay, so you had an idea of what you wanted. You had some themes available to you. You had some prepared modules that you knew would work and take you to those comfort zones so that if something did happen, you could fix it quickly. But if it didn't happen, you could just carry on. Is that correct?
And sometimes you throw in a little clue. You don't have to resolve everybody to home to have a victory. You know.
Now I want to address
You've got
the
lines
first thing that you
with your
said there.
partner up to the middle and back. You know, identify something that tells them that they're in the proper sequence, and bingo.
One of the things that you said to me, which is quite important, if you're at a dance and you've got a collar up there, and you can hear that collar's got all this emotional pent-up energy going, and suddenly, yeah, pass through, wheel and deal. Okay, centers, do the right and left. You'll feel that drop of energy until they find themselves, and then it
Yeah.
picks up again. And you can feel that. Now, one of the ways of disguising that, especially for new callers, is a box zero or a line zero. Because you can go, I've lost, where are they? Okay, I pass through, wheel and deal, centers, pass through, I'm in a box, great. Swing through, girls circulate, boys trade, boys run, bend the line, whoop to the middle and back, touch a quarter, all eight, it gives you a chance to relax, keep the dancers moving, gather your thoughts, see who's with who, and then move into your resolution technique, because it'll give you that breathing room rather than what you normally hear. Square through, and I get four hands around you go, and a right left through and slide through, reverse flutter, wheel center, Dixie style to an ocean wave, boys start, swing through, chain down that line, and then pass through, bend the line, center star through and pass through the other star through. Great, do side O, and that's what you hear. You hear that kind of a rhythm and break, that kind of a tone break. Using those simple
Emotional
modules,
break.
doing things, it changes the whole emotional feel of a presentation and delivery. And as Bob's saying, he was doing that at C1. That same principle applies to basic. For new callers, however, I will put this qualifier in. Don't try and do a 20-minute sequence. Don't try and do a 30-minute sequence. Don't try and do any sequence that's more than 2 or 3 modules stuck together. And those modules shouldn't be any more than 10 movements at the most. Something short and pithy that you can remember, that you can put together, because each one is a resolution in itself.
Yeah, I could show you a notebook that I have. I write routines that take you from a squared up set to a resolution. And I do it in 18 points, and I have a rule that it can never be longer than 1 page. And, because if I'm going to look at it, what I'm calling, I don't see very well, so it's got to be big print, okay? And you're right, I keep my sequences short. That was a one-time exception where I did that. And I probably did it out of frustration in that I gave away all my time. I confess, it was very, very selfish.
I put this on the screen, but this is one of the things I do when I'm writing choreography for myself. If I'm just starting to write, I'll go head square through. I recognize that I would actually write corner box, right and left through, CB out of sequence. Veer to the left, couple circulate, chain down the line. Great, that's facing lines. Don't really want to go to where that is right now. Star through, I know it, where the lines are. Star through, pass through, trade by, corner box. I would write that in there to start with, so that I start to recognize what they are. And if I'm preparing for an evening, that'll allow me, because if that says corner box, I will probably have, if my focus, let's say on this particular thing was chain down the line, I might have a resolution module with chain down the line in it that follows that chain down the line. I might have a resolution using chain down the line from a box that I can use. I might have a conversion from a box to a line using chain down the line. So I can insert them in any of those known points. If I'm in a corner line, I'd write corner line. And what it does is it helps me remember, when I'm looking at the dancers, what that formation looks like. Is that a corner line? Hey, I've got to get out from a corner line. And with time and practice, I've been doing this for about 40 years. I've probably got 2 or 3 dozen modules that I can pull out of my head from a few various formations when I need them. So if I recognize a corner line, bang. Most callers, when they're sight calling, will move the dancers around and they'll recognize a corner line, or they'll set up a corner line. Mental image callers, if they start with mental image, are absolutely fantastic at this, because they set up their X's and their O's to that corner. And hey, that, 1 and 3 Alaman positions are great they're perfect for setting these things up. Slide through, there's your corner line, and you've got a resolution from a corner line with whatever your theme is. You know, those are the kinds of things, but that's not sight pure. That's, I've used a technique to move the dancers to a point where I know where they are. I recognize that point. I've got a piece of memory that I can pull out that fits this situation. But Daryl's up there calling, and Daryl's, you know, done this 100 times. And I'm looking at Daryl going, how the hell does he string all that choreography together and realize where he is? Well, it's because he put them where they want, where he wanted them to be. It just seems like random sight calling.
Yeah, he did it with modules. That's one thing that I do. I call a lot of dances where there's a collection of callers, and I'll have my one tip, and I'll be calling a plus tip, a featured plus tip. So when I get up there and call that one plus tip, I try to call the entire plus list in that tip. I really hate it, and dancers don't like it either, because when a caller gets up there and calls a mainstream tip and adds a couple of plus calls to the tip, and it's really cheating the dancer, I feel. And you want to give them a variety of calls. You don't have to give them the whole list, but a preponderance of the calls.
I tried doing that once. I will never do it again because I hated it.
Oh. I've always been successful for it. I called a dance. I had once been called a dance with for Bill Davis, and he was quite famous with all his books that he wrote on it. And I was calling for his club, and I was doing an advanced thing, and he said, "Bob, it's not advanced enough." He says, "You're only calling 20% of the calls, you know, or 20% of the time." So I just went up there, switched gears, and I must have been doing 90% advanced. And he says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, hold back, guy, hold back." You know, because I was comfortable anywhere. I live choreography, and that's an advantage.
And my step is choreography is great. Working on choreography is great. But the focus is, if you're only calling 20% of the program, let's say you're calling a plus dance, you're only using 20% of programs, doesn't matter. If the dancers are enjoying themselves and having a good time, and you're giving them variety in how you use that 20% plus your mainstream program, you're a great caller. If you're a caller that's getting up there and you're calling an entire program with everything from inside out, upside down, and backwards, and the dancers are forcing themselves to get through it, even if they get through it and they're tired and they feel, yeah, that was tough, but I got through it, you haven't done them any favors, in my opinion.
Well, I don't know. I have a Sunday night dance group, and they can do anything upside down and backwards and reverse.
Yeah, that goes to reading a floor. You give the audience what they want.
Yeah, they want that, and I have to admit that's probably the best dance I've had in 15 years. I was on spot. I was creative, and I was doing stuff, and they would struggle with something I want them to do, and I'd back off and show them and get them through it. And you should have heard the cheers that came from the floor when they succeeded doing some of these routines that I wanted. And the whole night went that way, and I was just, man, I was walking on air when I left that dance. I was so happy. And the dancers were too. They were coming up and telling me that.
Absolutely. One of the things that I want to do, one things I want to do here is point out that the techniques that I talked about for new callers are the same techniques that Bob was using as an experienced caller that other callers use at any program level. Mastering those technique, and the reason they worked is because the foundation of mechanics, the foundation of the choreography, and the foundation of being an entertainer and delivering this was built before they ventured into that. Let's open up the floor to some other callers. Have we got any new callers that have had a struggle with this or have been thrust into sight calling and felt really, really uncomfortable with it? We've got a silent audience.
I was doing a jamboree once, and I was only going to do a singing call, and so another caller was doing a pattern, and I was doing the singer, and they looked at the singer ahead of time for the figure, and all of a sudden, halfway in the pattern, he hands me the mic, and as they're on the floor, and he says, "Now you continue," and I went, "Okay," and I did about 4 or 5 calls, and then I realized what I was doing, and then he had to sort of whisper the end to me, and I said, "It's lucky you helped me, because otherwise I would have kicked your shin," you know. But I like it better when I actually know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You didn't feel very good with that experience, did you?
No, and I made sure that I had to go on the floor with him the next day, and I stayed off the stage until he finished his pattern, and then I went up, so he couldn't pull that on me again.
That may well have been the lesson he was trying to teach you.
No,
But
he wanted, he
no,
said,
I understand that. But what I'm saying is that's something that I've seen an awful lot. It is a new caller exercise where you call a little bit and you tell the new caller, okay, call, and then you tell them to resolve. That's in training. That's training and exercise in the method of teaching. You should never, ever subject a new caller to that kind of stress with a floor of dancers, because all you're doing is making them feel bad about themselves. And if they feel bad about themselves in the delivery, guess what the dancers are feeling? If a smile is projected through the microphone, guess what bad feelings are projected through the microphone and what they sound like?
I was surprised that I did it because I'd never done patter before, and having to do it in front of 10 squares was quite interesting. As a sight caller.
I have seen a few young callers quit because that has happened to them.
No.
I've had
Anyone else
something similar happen to me where I was calling with some name callers, and all of a sudden they said we were alternating, and then right in the middle of a sequence, they'd say, "Take them home." Well, I don't sight call. I do mostly memory module stuff, so I know where I am the whole time. But it was fine with me. I just went and I called some very nice flowing stuff that I said, "Okay, Tim, take them home." So he couldn't pass the mic back to me again.
But I called for on the floor a couple of months ago, and they asked me ahead of time if I, just a minute or two, not so I didn't have too much time to get nervous, but I called a whole pattern sequence, just put on some pattern music, and I did a whole pattern sequence with just a mic. And I was like, "Oh, this is cool." So now I'm hooked. It's sort of like,
that's good. Janet, what are your experiences in this like?
Well, what exactly do you want to know? I've had lots of different experiences.
When you started calling, was the emphasis on getting you to, here's a zero, here's how you resolve, go? And
Well, when I went to the caller schools, most of the focus was actually on the resolve, and it wasn't about moving the dancers around. Some of it was on the modules, but nobody was able to explain the reasoning behind the modules and why to use them and the importance of them to where I actually used them. And so when I started calling, it was actually what you say not to do, and that is the get up there without a plan. But the difference for me was that when I went to all those schools, I thought there was one thing lacking from all of them, and that was none of them say, learn the definition of the call, learn what the call does. And that's where my call analysis sheet came into play, is because I said, they don't give me the tools that I need to know what I need to know in order to get up on the stage to do it. Because I had a memory issue trying to remember the different modules. And so I thought, okay, if I can learn the purpose of each call, and I did that a lot visually. And so that's Call-O-Rama was instrumental in doing that, because I could actually see, quote, a floor of dancers. And I could visually see where it took these people and how it moved them around, so that I learned the calls, so that when I got up there, it wasn't just haphazard calling, because I knew what the calls were going to do, although I didn't have any memorized modules. Does that make sense?
It does. One of the aspects that's going on is you're thrust into what happens at many, many caller school. The focus on teaching callers seems to be on teaching sight resolution. And I teach it mainly to get it off the table. And I'll teach it on the first day, and it'll never be used again, hopefully, for new callers, until they get to that point of the foundation. The unfortunate thing that happens at many, and it sounds like it may have happened to you, is they'll say, okay, here's the resolution, and now we're going to introduce modules, and you get 50 modules, and then they make you write, all right, I want you to do your theme around spin chain through, and I want you to do your theme around square through, and I want you to use it 3 different ways, and I want you to use this from 3 different setups, or flutter wheel 3 different ways. And for a new caller, why would we subject them to that? There's this fundamental premise of assumed knowledge, which a lot of caller school take into account, and they say, well, when you get to this school, you should know this. I'm a believer, if you enroll in one of my caller schools, you're going to get a package prior to that's going to say, here's the basic fundamentals for you a few months early, so you can read this. This is what you're expected to have as a base foundation, not memorize 50 modules or 50 getouts. You may only need 1 or 2. And to start with, what should happen is you get a module, or everybody has 1 or 2 modules, 1 line, 1 box. I don't care what the modules are, but they learn how to use them with what they already know. Once that is solid with them, then you add another one. You don't give them 50 and say, just use these interchangeably.
Yeah.
Because that's like trying to memorize a math textbook from the back to the front.
Okay.
It just doesn't work. It doesn't
No.
make sense.
The slide that you showed with the mathematical calculations of, if you only knew, 5 get-ins, 5 get-outs, 5 modules, whatever it was, the number of different possibilities that are there, that was very eye-opening just to see that.
Yep.
Okay. Mel?
Yes.
I, being mostly a modular caller, and probably I track it in my head, so I don't know what that's called. But I do not learn a new call. I learn every time I add a call, I have to have a module that goes with that call. Example in Plus, it's coordinate. I get them in a line, the partner line, touch a quarter, coordinate, bend the line right and left through, slide through to a corner box. I got that. And so I learn every call I learn, it's got a module to go with it. And
Absolutely.
not doing that, to me, is, you've heard the phrase, give a monkey a typewriter and eventually he'll write a novel, right? It might take 1,000,000 years, but whatever. That's sight calling is for monkeys. They're just pounding on a typewriter, and hopefully at the end they're going to get something. An individual call in literature is like having a word. But if you have a module, you have a paragraph. You've done something, and it's just the way I feel, and I'm probably the only one who feels that way. But
No, not at all.
It's just learning one call and trying to sight call I really detest sight callers. I can feel it when I'm on the floor. They have no idea where they are. I want to be led somewhere.
I love site callers that have a good foundation, that use modules, that use everything. I don't like somebody just gets up without a plan and moves the dancers and gets lost and tries and working through it, because I actually feel sorry for them, because I feel their pain. What you're saying about that, I do the same thing. Like if I have a movement, I've just put Dixie style as an example on the screen. If I want to call Dixie style at a dance, guess what? I prepare a bunch of modules. I can cite and move the dancers around into lines. I can get the flow and set up a Dixie style, and I can resolve. But I love to use things. I'll set up a corner box. I'll set up a partner line. I'll set up a corner box resolve and a partner line resolve that I can use the Dixie style with relatively short modules. And none of these are more than 10 movements in length. I'll practice these before I go out. This is part of my programming. I believe we were talking about programming earlier, that I'm going to prepare this. I've also prepared the singing calls that go with that. And I'll use either that one, or if that one might be a little more complex, again, it gives me a nice easy one, or one that I can use on the floor. And I'll do that for pretty much any movement that I have. I love to prepare myself to give the dancers the best experience. Doesn't mean I can't sight call. It doesn't mean I can't sight resolve, but I will use what I know and stuff that I prepared to set myself up so the dancers have the best successful experience and the best time that I can give them. I want to come away from a floor not saying, I did fantastic, I had a great, I was able to do this and this, and I was able to, I want to come off the floor saying, wow, the dancers really gave me energy. They had a good time. They were feeding me that they could do this and they could do this, and they wanted more and they wanted more. And there's a difference of taking the focus between I got to they got, and this is what it made me feel like. Mickey, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I somehow a little bit disagree with Bob.
Okay.
Well, not bad. On one hand, I guess I do work modules and work various systems, but I guess that comes along with the experience and the long time I've been calling and have memorized modules or sequences, whatever. But if I understood Janet just before you, I guess that's the way how I learned to call, because I wanted to know what is the call doing. And like a reverse the flutter, whatever, is nothing like a lady's chain being in standard couples, right? So I always wanted to know what can I achieve with the call. And when I use a call, I would call it sight calling, yes, to a certain extent, but I can see the sequence and the different status on the fly most of the time in I would say at least up to A1, A2, in order to resolve the square with some known get-outs, or even if at the fly I can see resolutions. For an example, like, if I have a column and I need to get one dancer across, and it's the center dancer looking out of his split box to the other side, coordinate is one thing to get him over. So if I call coordinate, it's not because I want to call coordinate. Of course, body flow and everything, preceding, following calls need to fit. But I call it because I want to get one dancer on the other side. Same thing like with spin chain too. Or if I want to get two dancers across spin chain, the gears would do. And so the most important thing, I think, is to know, especially the basic movements, the basic program, what the calls can do. Because then I translate the high level calls into my basic type thing. For example, yeah, if I take spin chain and exchange the gears, there's a lot of action going on, but as a matter of fact, it's one going over to the other side. That's just like spin chain too. It doesn't matter that he brings the others back over. The most important is he moves to the other side with the other people. If I want him in that group, This is one call you can choose if you're calling in plus. Motivate in A2 would do the same thing. So there are different variations on how they end up, and you got to know that, how to fix it in order to whatever get into a known formation then in order to resolve. But I want to know what the calls do, like on a Dixie style. If you do Dixie style to an ocean wave and you have facing couples, it's more or less something like a lady's chain or the right hand dancer chain across. Whatever formation we're going to have doesn't matter. Now, working in tandems, like in a double pass through formation and taking Dixie style, it is more or less a center's pass through, and then they play with the others. But it is a choreographic effect that I would like to know what's going to happen. Where can I move someone, or how can I get them over or bring them back or whatever? What is happening choreographic wise? And then, of course, you got to take care with the body flow. But this to me is important. And this keeps my choreo pretty much lively and not only fixed to modules. Okay, nothing against modules. I do use them, yeah, but I do not want to be restricted. And I think if you're able, and this is to me is kind of side calling. If you can do that, you can add at the spot a lot of variety. Even to your module.
It is site calling, Mickey, and but what you're talking about is exactly what I was saying. Now you used spin chain the gears and motivate for what they did. The classic example of that, and this is why I was saying, as a new caller, and unfortunately there's a lot of new callers, I know 3 in particular, that started calling C1 and A2. They started calling those levels, no foundation whatsoever. One of them in particular even had the tenacity to give Johnny Preston pointers on how to deliver a good evening, because before he realized who Johnny Preston was. But anyway, that aside, what Janet said about the the call analysis sheet, what Tim Mariner said about the call analysis sheet, what Guido said about the call analysis sheet, all 3 of those have taken different approaches to it, and the same as you, a different approach to it, to what works for you in understanding those calls. And part of that is not only understanding what the movement does for the movement mechanics, but what it does to the dancer. You know, what does a spin chain through? Oh, okay, that does a lady's chain effect. What does a flutter wheel do? Okay, that does, oh my goodness, what am I? That's a boy's chain effect. It's still a lady's chain effect. You know, what is this going to do? That's part of the call analysis sheet. That is basic tool number 1. That's understanding the individual square dance movements. That's the mechanics of it. That is, like I said, there's really only 3 basic tools in your toolbox: your movement mechanics, your resolution technique, and your basic foundation modules. Everything will build from them. They are important. That's the essence of choreography, whether it's basic, whether it's SSD, whether it's night 1, that's the essence, and it applies to it every step of the way up. Those 3 basic tools expand as you gain experience and you learn what does what with each program. That's where your focus should be on choreography, is that basic foundation first. When you're learning that basic foundation, that doesn't take a lot to learn that. That takes time and practice. Where your emphasis should be is, how do I take those 3 basic tools and give the dancers an enjoyable exercise of experience, of companionship, of camaraderie, of fun, that they want to come back and enjoy that over and over and over again. Right. And that's where the essence is. And if you can master those 3 tools, then you can expand those 3 tools into everything. The basic foundation modules, that's why I have 1 line 0 and 1 box to start, because you got your singing calls. Now I've got 2 singing call figures and 2 modules. That's 4. I've got the get outs for everything else. How many is 4? That's 5,720 different routines I can make out of that. Add on to that the chicken plucker, add on to that the conversion modules, add on to that the invert and rotate, your 5 foundation modules. You've got more than enough material to work that grid upside down, inside out, and backwards. Add on to that your circles. You've got enough to make a massive dance that is fun, has got variety, that you can take and entertain dancers, give them a good time, while all the time you're continuing to build that foundation of learning more, developing thing, and getting to the point where Mickey said, it's because I've been doing this for a long time. I recognize this. It just seeming, I recognize where they are and I can take them to this. And I know that I can use this technique to do that. That's sight calling, yes, but it's sight calling because you're building it from a foundation of what is known from how you developed. And that's why I say there's no such thing as pure sight. It is absolutely great. And I'm glad both, like Mickey and Janet, you both taken a slightly different approach, but you agree on the same course of action of how you started. It worked for you. It doesn't work for everybody. Roz, you got your hand up.
And just one more thing, to quote someone who's been on this session quite often, whatever works for you and your dancers is good. So I don't.
Yes. I say that a lot. What is the best resolution technique? The one that works for you. What's the best calling? Right. One that works for you.
So, and if like Bob said that he's uses with modules, and that's fine. He has success, dancers enjoy it, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Roz.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I find is really helping me at the moment is we're teaching SSD, and if I'm teaching it, I have to know the definition. I have to know what the move does, and working with limited calls has really been an eye-opener. So I'm finding that's actually building on me and really helping a lot.
Yeah, but
I'm sorry.
SSD, the principles apply to every single program. The principle applies to, I've got an engagement to go and call at a wedding because the bride and groom are square dancers and they want their friends to enjoy it. Wow, I've got to create stuff for a wedding, whether or not that's everybody in a big circle and getting them moving, and then working couples in a Sicilian circle and moving them around and getting them into squares and having a party. The principle is exactly the same. I'm going to use what I know works, and I'm going to build from what I know so that I can give those dancers the experience. If I'm doing it with SSD, SSD is the basic and the mainstream program, less a few things and less all of the hyper extended and subtle extensions of the applications. It's still the basic and mainstream program. And if you go to most festival dances, what you're going to find is a lot of what's called there, with the exception of 2 or 3 movements. We looked at some of these recordings. With the exception of 2 or 3 movements, most of what is called would all fit in the SSD program. Most of what is called would all fit in the basic program with a couple of mainstream movements. Even in the plus halls, 20%, and the rest is all simple mainstream and basic. That's what's being called these days. That's what's entertaining. It's not that we're not forcing the dancers to dance. We're giving them what they want. That's the product of what's going on. Now, everybody's going to be different. I think it was Bob, you said it, and I know Mickey, you espouse this as well. Your dancers want what your dancers want. If you have a good, solid technical group and they want good, solid technical group dancing, then that's what you give them. But you've got to use this technique to give them that, just the same as if you've got a group that's just learning SSD. The technique is the same. The foundation is the same. The principle is the same. Build it and get better with it. There's a question about that sheet on Dixie style. I did a session on this, but working with all that, I just create those in a Word document and I paste them into a HTML that I can put into Square View. If you want, I can sit down with you sometime and go through that if you want to have a look at. But there is a session recorded on, I think it's recorded, that I did here as well. But I can, that's a different topic and we can do that on a different day. Any other comments, questions? Eric, I was just going to say, you've been very quiet today.
Well, first of all, I have no argument at all with anything that you presented here. The only thing I would say is that this is more or less a technique for use by a moderately experienced caller as opposed to a new caller. It would give a new caller a false sense of where they are, what they know, because every new caller, in my opinion, needs to be able to, in short order, teach a class. And this does nothing in terms of helping them to teach, well, I shouldn't say nothing, that's not true. But it's not something that they would use right away in terms of being able to teach a class. I have been mentoring a new caller since the early part of the year. We get together with a Zoom session twice a week. And what I've been working with him doing is we've been learning choreographic theory. And then after he's becoming proficient with the theory and really understanding it, we're learning, if you will, how to use particular calls to implement the theory. And we started out by doing it with a week 2 class, using the calls that would be available in SSD through week 2. And we worked on that for about 2 months. And then we've gone from that. We're now using the full, if you will, mainstream program as he feels comfortable with the calls. He happens to dance through Plus and has danced for, 35 years or something like that. But he's learning and he's admitting that, and this is terminology that I use, with a call, if you know when you can use it and you know where it's going to take you, that's an implement.
Yep.
Right. Then if you learn, I want to go from here to there so I can use this call, now it's become a tool. And it becomes, and you can enhance on the tools as you can use it to go to more places, more things. So he is learning the difference between, the two, and learning that he knows many, many implements, but very few tools.
Those are in the semantics of terminology, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, with one exception. For too long, and this is opinion, but for too long, there has been this big strike that if you want to be a caller, every new caller should get out and teach a class, get a bunch of new dancers and learn how to call by teaching people. I totally and completely disagree with that. Eventually, yes. But what I think is, and if you're interested in calling, you need to learn your basic fundamentals first, your call out, what a call does, or as you put it, your implements, then how to use your tools, how to perform, how to do this, how to deliver before you even go out and teach a class. Because if you can't do that, what you're going to do is you're going to give a false impression about your own capability. You will get better, but what's going to happen as soon as they go out to dance with somebody else? Not every caller is going to be successful, but some callers are going to be very successful. As far as it goes, in this presentation, I agree with you. This is a little bit, this isn't brand new caller, but that's why I added the qualification. Tool 1 is the movement mechanics and all that goes, what handedness, what the tool, what the, or as you put it, the implement, the understanding of each movement does, where it takes me from this setup to that setup. A lot. I do a star through, it does this, it changes direction. All of that is your call analysis. And that's why I qualified. We're going to assume that this is known, because we've had sessions on that already, and I didn't want to go back and recoup that. And it's the same with the resolution technique. We're going to assume that is known. We're going to focus on the next part. Now I can move the dancers. And eventually, once you get that at the program that you're going to be calling at, be it basic or be it mainstream or be it plus or C1, then, and only then, should you even consider teaching a class. In my opinion, and it's only my opinion, the biggest mistake that many new callers make is, I'm going to be a caller. I go to my first caller school. I don't have a foundation, but I really want to do this. I'm going to get a bunch of friends together and I'm going to teach a square dance club and get a class going. It's a big mistake. Getting a bunch of friends together in your basement and saying, I'm learning to call. I'm going to teach you how to dance the best I can while you help me learn to call. That's a whole different aspect. But starting a club and teaching a club right off the bat, I think is a big mistake for many new callers, because they put unfair expectations on themselves and too much pressure on themselves. There's too much to do before that. Daryl, you've got your hand up. Or sorry, Eric, hang 1 second. I'm going to give you a rebuttal to that, Eric, because I've challenged you, and then we'll go to Daryl.
Yeah, well, it's not really a big rebuttal. The gentleman that I'm mentoring with, Ron, he's looking at teaching a class in a couple of years down the road.
And that's fine.
Yeah, but that is in particular, that is his primary goal. That's sort of why he's getting started here. Before the pandemic, we had between 60 and 80 callers here in the state of Wisconsin. We now have less than 10. So there isn't much in the way of classes.
I'm a believer that everybody's blaming COVID for the foibles and the falling of square dancing. I'm also a believer that it has nothing to do with COVID. COVID was just an excuse to get out of a sinking ship for a lot of people. Daryl, you had your hand up.
I did. Of course, I started calling by teaching a class. I did tell them that I didn't know anything. I was starting out, and we got all the way through it. For me, it was incentive. It was incentive for Roz, this SSD she's doing. That's incentive. She doesn't want to be dumb or not good enough to do it. She's going to work hard to get there.
Oh, absolutely.
It's that's the one thing. And I don't disagree with anything that anybody's been saying, especially whatever works for you is right for you. I personally still start brand new callers with check and plucker.
Absolutely.
I do every time. And the reason for that is you go every place you can go in a square in that one figure. You've got those positions going back and forth. Now you can change the direction of that grid. You can turn it into lines, which are still just part of the grid. If you had a corner box and you say star through, you're in those lines, but that same grid still it's still there. It exists. That is important to know. The fact that there's 2 4-dancer boxes, one on each end, and a 4-dancer box in the middle, that's nice to know. But basically all you do is you use a variety of ways of sending dancers back and forth across that grid.
Absolutely.
Pure and simple. So this is teaching them traffic. Once they know traffic, then after that, everything, with the exception of circle figures, absolutely everything is done in that grid. It doesn't look like it. If you're an ocean wave, it doesn't look like you're in a grid, but you are. You're relative to that same grid. And if you can control what two couples of dancers do together in any one of those 3 boxes, then you know how to. Now, how do you do that? Well, you get them into the 2-couple box and you do memorized combinations of movements called modules. They don't have to be zeros or equivalents. They can just be flow modules. I know that swing through boys run puts me here. So what that module does is says, okay, I'm in a corner box. If I wanted to get into that 2-face line, swing through boys run. It's like jumping over a mud puddle. You start here, you jump over there, mentally speaking. You don't follow anybody. And once you've got enough modules, enough combinations just to move the dancers, then after that, control of the Alaman left comes into the picture.
Yeah.
But the first thing you've got to do is teach them how to move those dancers, and knowing that with the new callers, especially, just how to move them back and forth across. How do you get in there? Well, you can do the dive through pass through. You can do the pass through trade by. From ocean waves, you can do all 8 circulates. Swing through boys run, couple circulate, wheel and deal. What else is there? You tell me right now, what other ways are you going to move a couple back and forth across that set? Circulate, dive through, pass through, trade by, couples circulate, and
And
at
equivalent.
mainstream basic, what else is there? It's not that
Pass
much
through,
to
bend the
learn.
line.
Pardon?
And you,
Pass through and bend the line.
From lines, what that does is change the direction of the grid. But
Yes,
you
it also has you working with another,
Yeah,
another pair.
yes, it does. Yes, it does.
that's why you may I think you probably noticed that in that last sequence when I was talking about you've got 2 singing calls, you got a box and a line module, and how much routine, 6 minutes of choreography. And then in that last one, you notice I did a chicken plucker. So I could do exactly the same thing working with different people. And starting with heads and then starting the next one with sides, I'm changing the direction, but I'm still working the grid up and down or across. And using that chicken plucker over, use it, new people, new aspect, new feeling, same routine, just a different order, and come back again. And exponentially, that chicken plucker is one of your most powerful tools as a square dance caller.
Well, it's the only one. Eric, I'm sure you realize that pass through and bend the line, the reason that changes, of course, it changes the direction of the grid, but that's where your inversion modules come from as well, where you change the insides for the outsides. As far as that goes, the grid still remains the same, and relative to that grid remains the same, except that you've changed the actives.
Yeah.
So, really, still, it's just the same back and forth across. Sorry, I get into this, and the mechanics are so simple. If you can get the new callers to understand that they can go anywhere they want as long and control as long as that's all they're doing.
And the essence of it is you can't do any of this unless you build that base foundation. Or Daryl said it, Paul said it, everybody said it. You need to know what the movements do. You need to know how to move them, put them together. Once you start seeing little combinations, you've got flow modules, you've got zero modules, you've got all those things. Once you've got a chicken plucker, you're able to move them back and forth across the grid. You can start calling and moving the dancers. And all you're doing from there is just changing your focus to use a different movement. I want to use a different movement on this side. I want to use a different movement. And you build and you build and you build your pictures accordingly. It's basic fundamentals. And you hear me say it all the time. Foundation first. Build your fundamentals. Get to know your foundations of calling, those 3 basic tools, and build from there. Bob, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Mickey. He was talking about spin chain exchange of gears, how it moved one person across, and all of a sudden, just that little information gave me my perfect routine for using spin chain exchange the gears. End it with an AC doocy, and all you've done is a right left through.
Yep.
And that's good flow. So if you know that 2 right and left throughs is a big 0, gets you right back to where you started, right? So from a 0 box, if you do the right and left through or star through past the ocean, the same thing. You do your spin chain exchange of gears followed by an AC doocy, bam, you're back in a corner wave. Knowing now, I will use that a lot, knowing that all I had to know was AC doocy, and all of a sudden I have complete control of knowing where everybody is. It takes them halfway around the square, granted, so I could do a spin chain exchange of gears, AC doocy, explode, load the boat, bingo. They've gone right back to their home position corner box. But it's
every time you use that now, just put 50 cents on my account, okay?
Yeah, I'll tell them all to email you, Mickey, and say thank you.
Betsy, was your hand up there? Or Oh, hang
Could I just chime in, Mel?
Absolutely, Al.
Just one comment on what Darryl was saying and also what Mickey and them were just talking about. They raised the issue of doing something twice, and that is a useful tool for the new caller. That pass through bend the line, done twice, pass through bend the line, has in fact rolled your entire box over to the other side of the square, just not one couple. So that's a useful tool for the new callers to have in their toolbox. And if they call something and they leave something out, then maybe calling it twice will zero out for them. So just those two little bits of knowledge can be really useful.
Yeah,
But
Yeah, we have in the
80%
caller
of the
school,
time it does.
You do it
we call
twice
it,
and
if
it's
you're in
either a
trouble,
0 or a right and
do
left
it
through.
double.
Sorry, Bob and Mickey, you were talking at the same time.
Just repeat what you're saying, Mick.
Yeah, I was just adding in the caller school what we say to the new callers: if you're in trouble, do it double. So this is exactly what you were just saying, pointing out. Then, yeah.
The only problem with that is that works about 80 to 90% of the time, but every time you do it, you always seem to hit that 10%.
Now,
That's when entertainment comes in and showmanship.
Absolutely. Bob, you had something to say.
yeah, it's I'm sorry I spoke over Mickey when I said it, but when you do it twice, you've either accomplished a 0 back to where you started or a right and left through. That's the math of it. So 50% of the time you're dead on, you know. And if you start as a facing couple and you call it twice, you figure out what it is. But I have used that do it double for 50 years, Alan. I love it.
Betsy, I had a question for you, Betsy. And it's a very important, and it was probably just a camera angle, but are you drinking orange juice or were you sculling a beer there?
Neither. Orange soda.
Orange soda. Okay.
From back here, it looked like it was a Corona beer that you were downing.
No, it's Sunkist.
Oh, Sunkist.
Okay. Back to Alan's thing, do it double. If just that module I just had that I will use forever now, spin change, exchange the gears, AC-doocy, I told you was a right and left through. But if I call another spin change the gears and an AC-doocy, it's like calling a right and a left through twice. As Alan said, I'm back to the corner box. And the nice thing about it, each time a different girl led in the exchange. So there was variety in doing that. And it's a total true 0 to do it twice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you take a ocean wave with the boys in the center then, and they all have the partner, you after the second time could run into a right and left grind.
Yes. We think alike sometimes, Mickey.
Well, we seem to be coming to the end of it. I want to thank everybody for coming in. I especially want to thank Mark, who had to go because he's calling a dance, but he's left it on record, who has not only looked after the last few sessions for me while I've been away, hosted the last 2 sessions, and also puts everything up, makes it available, loads all of the information available for download. As I said before, I want to say thank you, Eric, for coming in last time. Very, very much appreciated. A few comments on that, which I really, really enjoyed. How do I do this? How do I do that? I think a lot of people were surprised exactly what you can and can't do, modifying what is a program, and some people will use it and some people won't. It's absolutely fantastic.
Anybody who, if I could, anybody who is using it, if you'll send me an email, I'll keep a list and I'll send you the updates. I do have an update already on the program with another feature.
If you just want to type your email into the chat there, that'd be great. And as I said, if anybody has any topics that they really wanted to look at, or you had any suggestions of presenters that you wanted me to try and get a hold of to do presentations, by all means, let me know, flick me an email, and we'll see what we can do. I don't have anything scheduled, but I've been asked about 4 times how I put those spreadsheets with the modules into Square Time. And well, it's just pasting a Word document, but I can show you again. I might do that before the session in a fortnight.
Okay, and Mickey, on your doing it twice, you don't have to do it twice. Now that you know it's a right and left through, you get a partner line, do a half sachet past the ocean, spin chain, exchange the gears to an AC doocy right and left grand. Boom.
Right.
I'm sorry. Once I get started on something like that, it just builds and builds and builds in my head.
I guess we're even under 50 cents now.
Yeah.
I think we've lost John. Yep. Oh no, there he is. Thought we'd lost you there for a second, John.
He was just nodding, Mel.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much for coming in. And as always, any comments are welcome. Flick me an email if you have any questions. I can help you. If I can't, and quite possibly I can't, I might be able to at least direct it to people that can. So for the rest of you, have a great Saturday or a Sunday morning, evening, or night, depending on where you are in the world.
Thank you, Mel, for a great class.
Yes, thank you very much, Mel.
Thank you,
And
Mel.
everybody else for their comments.
Thank you, Mel, from New Zealand.
Thanks, Keith. Take care, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.